working through your technique, I want to help continue to raise the ceiling. And we can raise
Sure.
the floor
Yeah.
there as well. But I think
Yeah.
a lot of, getting to play at the highest possible level that you're capable of, we might have to go beyond the swing a little bit. All right, welcome to the Player Pursuits podcast. My name is Alex Shattuck, and today, first guest, first episode, we've got an instructor, Jon Eisman, out of Northern Virginia, one of the top-rated instructors in Virginia, and kind of one of the pioneers in building an academy based around technology, getting the most out of their players. So how are you doing, Jon?
Hey, Alex, how are you? I appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm looking forward to chatting today.
Yeah, no, it is great to have you on. So thank you for coming on. And I guess we'll kind of dive right into it. Golf is one of those sports or hobbies, it truly almost defines who we are and not the results. I think that's a big thing for players. We don't want our
Right.
results to define who we are, but golf
Right.
oftentimes defines who we are. So just kind of, I'd like to know a little bit more about what golf means to you, what your journey within the sport and how you
Sure.
got to where you are transpired.
Yeah. Hopefully, this is about an hour, 2 hour conversation how we got into it, right? But no, I was one of those kids growing up that golf wasn't really cool yet. The Tiger effect hadn't happened yet. If you were an athlete, you played basketball, baseball, football, and I remember me almost loving the game so much that I almost didn't tell my friends that I really enjoyed playing golf, right? I noticed in a change in me primarily when I knew I was playing golf the next day, and I couldn't sleep because I was so excited that I would be going out on the golf course playing. So, golf to me has shaped me tremendously from my high school years, to my college days, primarily because I was in that pursuit of man, this game is really hard. To me, it came a lot harder than basketball, baseball, football did, and so I wanted to keep battling, to keep getting out there, trying to understand the game a little bit more. I think golf is, you said something how golf identifies us all differently, and for me, it was just how hard the game truly, really was. Even to the point where, man, I'd love to teach it one day because it is difficult to learn. It is hard to kind of key in on how you get better and things to improve on. So I identified into the game more because it was highly, highly difficult compared to the other sports.
Yeah, I know for myself, like the swish of a net when you
Yeah.
sink a jump shot,
Yeah.
when you hit a baseball well, it was that feeling of impact for me as a
Right.
golfer that it was the most addicting feeling. It just all
Sure.
I wanted to do all summer long, and
Right.
we
Right.
grow within the sport from
Sure.
there. So
Absolutely.
obviously, playing, you're addicted. You want to become a teacher because that is what a lot of us, I know I teach myself, that is
Right.
what we do to stay close to the game and educate others. What has your teaching journey been like? I know you've had the chance to
Yeah.
learn from some of the best.
I did. Yeah. I was very lucky, very fortunate. I think, I even became a professional very unaware of what you were supposed to do in a golf swing. I remember getting lessons going, I don't do any of that. I've never thought about that. So yeah, I really, when I became a professional, I joined the PGA of America and I put that blue blazer on, I put that PGA pin, and I wanted to go to all those teaching and coaching summit meetings and I wanted to soak it all up. And I think for me, you almost kind of get to a point where you get all that information and you try to go out there and you try to work on people, and you just don't know if it's working. The person in front of you could say, "Hey, this is great. This feels great," and then they go play and they call you. You know this, Alex. Like they call you and they go, "Man, I played terrible." Right? So it's kind of like, what are we doing? What am I supposed to be doing as an instructor to really hone in to get the best out of my students and out of my players? So studying under guys, I kind of went from my section. I worked at Westwood Country Club and I almost left the industry altogether to try to learn more about it. I kind of went down and I traveled all over the place learning under guys that I didn't even know what their methods were, what their philosophies were, but I kept a notebook And I remember looking at that going, man, that's gold. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that before. So you kind of have this big, huge teaching toolbox of information that you feel like you could pull out. But I think that the biggest thing was once you find those instructors that kind of have the same language in their head, you're almost after the same thing. That's where it kind of clicks. So guys like Dana Dahlquist was a big influence on me. It was more getting introduced to positions because we didn't have all the technology, but just a better understanding of those positions and what to see in a player. In 2D, when we look on a video, there's only so much that we can see. So at that time, it was a lot of position-based golf and learning how to get those people in those good positions. There were some small rumblings and talks about like how we move our body and things like that, but I think it wasn't until I really paired the two of getting involved with some of the science behind it that it was really a good fit for me.
Yeah, so I think that over the last let's call it 50, 60 years, but I'm sure it's been before that as a kind of
Yeah,
student of the game, historian of the game, the golf instruction landscape has just changed drastically. It truly went
right,
from
right,
just a decent player trying to tell others what they felt to
100%.
now we have a camera so we can actually see
Right,
maybe what your feel is and what's real in the most basic 2D sense, and
right,
everything's just exploded from there.
right.
You traveled around, going to a bunch of the best coaches. Are you okay kind of
Sure.
name dropping anybody or
Yeah,
any?
absolutely. I mean, you can name it from Mike Adams to the Stack and Till guys with the Mike Bennett, Andy Plummer, Mac O'Grady schools. I mean, you name it. I absorbed all that information. I was in those seminars, constantly just trying to say, oh, you know, I, this is something different, right? This is there's structure to this. You can actually kind of put structure behind golf instruction, which I think is very hard to do. But I think that's when you kind of say to yourself, wow, there for 100 years we've been saying a fundamental of golf is grip stance, ball position, posture, and it has nothing to do with movement. And as you know, you have people that have great fundamentals with those grip stance, ball position, posture, and they can't hit it. So you kind of wanted that whole spectrum of information learning under different people that were influential within instruction. And I think that's where I said, for me, myself, hey, this is really good. Hey, I don't know what that is yet, so I'm not going to focus on that. This maybe doesn't fit the way that my brain works, so I'm not going to worry about that. But I think the best thing as an instructor, I would tell all the young instructors too. I have 12 guys here at EGA too that go out and learn all that stuff. Go out and absorb all that, and really get a bigger kind of horizon of what it is that is golf instruction and what's out there. I think you said it perfect. It's kind of like I remember taking lessons and they just slapped up the on the wall the frame by frame positions of like a tour pro, and you go, hey, you don't look like this guy, you don't look like this guy, and you go, okay, right? We didn't know any better. You go, okay, well, how do I do that? And so I think I like where we are with golf instruction now because there's some facts. There's a lot more facts over fiction nowadays. A player is in a better position, I think, to filter out the good and the bad nowadays.
I agree, and although it seems like there's more difference than ever before, I think that the goals are more defined as being the same, even amongst different theories. I really admire guys like you who went out and learned under everybody, took in all the information and kind of dug it out of the dirt. My background's a little different, where I was trained very much in one school of thought and one that I believe
Sure,
in and teach. And
sure,
so
yeah,
one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of have you on early is because of that difference, and that's what I'm trying to do in my own career moving forward
right,
is going out and picking out other voices
yeah,
to listen to. So
no,
when
yeah,
I very first started kind of talking to other people, my college teammates, friends in the industry, about you and your academy, the same two things just kept coming up all over the place, which was technology and pressure. I want you to
right,
kind of talk a
right.
little bit about why you think you have that reputation and why you think that it is going to help players.
Yeah, I really felt like, I remember going to a seminar, and it was up in Caves Valley, and there's a lot of great instructors there. And this was years ago, it was probably a decade ago. And they were talking about a pressure plate, which was like this thick, right, that they would stand on. And I go, what the heck is that thing? Wait a second. What is that thing measuring? What is that thing doing? Is it important? Is it not important? And I felt like movement in general. I think we take good athletes and we put them in golf and we go, okay, boom, here you go, hit that thing. Except you can't really move, but really you got to move enough, but don't really move. So I was more interested, just for me, that like I know everybody in the seminar was interested in the other things, and for me, I was just really focused on this force plate and thought it was really cool that you could see kind of where you were moving within the ground, to the trail side, to the lead side, with how much force and how fast you were doing. For me, that kind of lit up a light bulb, like, oh, well, maybe that's something that would really help a golfer, whether they're a 18 handicap or whether they're a tour player. And so I really got invested early into force plate technology from Swing Catalyst. We're the only academy that I think I know in this country that have Swing Catalyst, Smart to Move, and gas force plates. And these force plates measure 3 degrees of movement. So you can have some pretty cool things as far as mapping along the ground that gives you some clues of what's going on up top. So the very first thing I learned is, man, this player's over the top, but they're really not over the top with how they're swinging their arms. Their feet along the ground are causing them to have that over the top motion. And I thought that was something new, different. I hadn't heard that before. Growing up or playing the game, like, hey, you're over the top with your feet. Like, what the hell does that mean? So to me, I said, whoa, that's a little niche of different information that maybe I could get on board with and learn ways to communicate that to students in a way that it helped influence the golf club.
Yeah, I think that what technology has done is allow us to measure and learn in ways that we would have never even considered until it slapped us in the face.
Right.
We saw it
Right.
first with obviously TrackMan,
Right.
and it amazes me all the things that are still being discovered within the numbers, the correlations that exist there with whether it's specific moves or the other numbers on the screen that no one else is paying attention to.
100%.
There's a spin loft has been like this new thing that everyone's paying attention to, and it's not new. It's just that we're finally learning and catching up to the technology.
Right, and I think that
there.
Right, you're exactly right, Alex. And I think, sorry to cut you off there. I think
you're good.
The really interesting part about a TrackMan that came out in 2009, I think was the first ever TrackMan that came out. Technology just goes, hey, like a lot of the ball flight law, all those ball flight laws that we thought were set in stone are now totally changed, right? Because the data is saying actually every shot you hit is a miss hit, right? I mean, basically that's what TrackMan is, right? It's saying like everything, there's never zeros across that board on those parameters. So I think it's really interesting when we have that information now, and you can combine that with some ground data. Because I think a lot of times in my world, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, the reason that you're getting this ball data is some of that, how you're being influenced moving in and out of the ground. There is a big correlation. Yes, we know face is king, and if you could square your face, but what is actually happening when you square that face? Or is there things that are happening within that motion, within that movement, that can really influence your club face, your path, your attack angle, your spin loft, all of those things? And that's where we are, I think, right now. Right now, we're kind of trying to put together all these puzzle pieces of, if I move a certain way, does that influence the golf club a certain way? And we do have 3D data that we can actually hook up to a player so we can see where the golf club is going. And you start to say, yeah, there are some pretty efficient movement patterns that correlate and influence where the golf club is going to go.
And all that to say, it's not like it's necessarily making the golf swing easier. It's making the journey to get where you want to go easier than ever before.
I would agree. It's speeding up the learning process. It's something that, you know, if we're talking about grip, stance, ball position, posture, in those lessons, I don't know. It's like, do you pay a six series of lessons for that to get that perfect, or are we speeding all this up by going, hey, if you're a 20 handicapper, or if you're Rory McIlroy and you come in here and you get on the plates, we start at the same spot, right? We just hit a ball off the plate. So the technology is really, yes, it's kind of fast tracking the learning experience for the student. I love it because I could say, hey, this isn't Jon Eisman's biased opinion. There is some science behind this, and excuse me. And I think sometimes that's helpful. Going, oh yeah, there's computers, there's stuff telling me. It's like an MRI for your golf swing, right? Like there's things here that are in place science wise that kind of say, yeah, this is more efficient movement compared to what I was doing.
Yeah, and not that you have to give away the secret sauce, but has there been anything specifically that's really surprised you, that maybe you wouldn't have thought, or maybe you saw this player did it this way, and that led to some interesting results?
Sure. Yeah, I would say that, and this is a question I get a lot, like, what is the gold, right, within movement, or what is the gold within me taking a capture and looking at data? And I would say primarily, you know, from tour players to good ball strikers, there are more similarities within movement than there is big, huge differences. There is a million different ways to move and make it efficient. There's some crazy movements, there's less movement, but really when you combine, in golf, we move lateral, so we move across the ground, you know, into our trail side and towards the target. That creates after that some torque motion. We call it AP force or toe heel force, and then there's vertical. So the biggest kind of thing that we can look at with the data is a player kind of going through that sequence, and with how much force are they going through that sequence. So there's some gold within the data that we get to see if it's efficient. I would say most people do those planes of motion, but probably 95% of everybody are late doing that. So they don't create enough force doing that in the golf swing. We know that most players are very narrow. So that shuts off some of this linear motion, right? We know that people are kind of playing heavier golf clubs, so it's going to shut off kind of maybe how much we could actually torque the body. So there are some really good pieces within data that we collect. It's like a stamp of approval that you go, hey, you got all these planes of motion going great. Let's just crank them up and let's just do them a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think that's basically perfect, and where we go with it, and how we find what we're looking for is really the part that matters in the journey in developing a golf swing.
Right.
You know, you're finding your kind of preferred matchup there. And, you know, I think people think that instructors are trying to teach one swing, everyone's trying to do the same thing. I think that a really experienced instructor is working on more trying to find what works for you within, and knows how to crank the dials to make it a little bit more natural for you.
Right. I totally agree. I think every golf instructor out there, they're really trying to help. I think there's no golf instructor out there that's getting on the tee going, hey, you know what? I'm not interested in this guy. Like, everybody's trying to help. I think it's more, just like you said, it's finding those things that are good and making sure that they stay there, and also making sure that you keep sharpening those things. I think one of the great things at EGA that we do really well, especially with our better players, is we don't really say, hey, we're going to change your whole golf swing today. We're going to put your arms more out. We just go, look, if we move a little bit different, you'll probably torque the handle a little bit differently and the shaft will move. So there isn't these big, huge changes that you would maybe feel like you got to go to stop slicing the golf ball. I think if guys walk out of my studio and they go, man, I got to hit the range like every day for 3 hours to make this work, that would be a failed lesson, in my opinion. I want them to be able to see this, feel this, see the data that it's changed in that hour to 2 hour session, and go, wow, I just got to take this risk reward. I just got to move a little bit differently out there to see the difference. And I think that's the best part. It really has fast tracked how that player can get better more knowledgeable at a faster rate. And I think the movement, if we just look at it on 2D, we don't really know what's going on underneath there. And I've got a great story for this. If you have time for this, Alex, I have a really good story.
Of course.
This was before I was really involved in any force data collection. This is probably about 15 years ago. And I was at Congressional Country Club, and I was there to actually do a seminar. And in front of me was just a junior class going on. And right in front of me was a 10-year-old girl, and she was hitting golf balls, and she was hitting driver, and she was falling all over the place, and laughing, having a great time. And these balls were pelted, just boom, every ball. It looked really bad. It looked worse than Scotty Scheffler's feet all over the place, right? And I sit there and I was like, man, I was just watching it, and I was just so captivated by how consistent the strike was with driver on the ball, and she was falling all over the place. And nothing against the instructor. The instructor was going down and was grading the follow-through positions, right? Just like we would have to stay balanced and do all those things. And we didn't know anything different. And the instructor gets to this girl who was piping it and says, okay, let's just hold our finish and toe tap let's get way more balanced in our golf swing, right? And unfortunately, I watched the poor girl just struggle for the last 10 minutes, and she was very balanced. She was holding her finish position. She was doing all these wonderful movement pieces that looked good, but she couldn't hit a ball. And she sat down, just crisscross applesauce, and kind of put her head in her hands and didn't participate the last 5 minutes. And for me, that was like an eye-opening experience as far as like, whoa, what happens if we just took the greatest female player ever to play and we coached her out of that movement, right? What is balance to all of us is very different. She was probably very imbalanced to coordinate the face there and hit great shots and solid shots. And just because it looks unorthodox and it doesn't look right on camera. And I always remember that. And I think about that often, like, wow, it could look different, right? I mean, it could look out of control, but it might be very controlled for that particular player. So you got to kind of go into it. I always tell my guys here, like, every lesson is an experiment, and it's okay. It's okay to not know the answer going in, because you don't know how that player moves. You don't know how balanced they are on their heels or on their toes or whatever it is. Everybody is different within those movement pieces that can be efficient.
Well, and I would say one of the last things that you want to do is take the athleticism out of somebody's swing. Like, golf is not always thought of as a sport in the most traditional sense as far as an athletic feat, but it is in a sense that athleticism is only going to help if it's used properly or used in a way that's comfortable.
You got it. We've had people that have played Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and I've been fortunate enough to look at how they move, and it's like, man, just just keep moving, keep moving the way that your body wants you to move. It's okay to kind of do that. So sometimes I would consider these the greatest movers on the planet, right? If you're playing a sport at the highest level, I categorize people in my studio as good movers or bad movers. But just because you have one leg doesn't make you a bad mover. You overall, we want you to have that freedom, like you said, Alex, to be athletic, to move, to do those things. And I just think we're not taught that. Mm-hmm. I was taught to keep my head still, put my feet in cement blocks, keep my back to the target as long as I can, throw the club out to the right and roll the face so I can hit a draw. And you go, oh, okay, that's a draw, but it's not. I couldn't even hold a green with a pitching wedge at some point, right? So we're in this great time period of understanding that, yes, it's okay to move. And I think people that have had back injuries and are golfers that might be up there in age a little bit, it gives them some freedom to say, hey, I don't have to stay really still and swing the club around my spine, which is really hard. It's okay to move a little bit. It's okay to fire your feet. It's okay if your head moves 3 inches off the ball or more. will allow you that, because we do see some correlation of how that can influence and help the golf club.
Yeah, and nothing makes me happier as a student of the game to see that progression and see that people are okay with some things that we're
Sure.
thinking outside the box finally. I
Right.
think for a long time it got a little bit stuck, and now we're finally seeing it
Little
doesn't
cookie
have to
cutter
be
with some
anymore.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think this is a wonderful game that it's almost passed down by, it's like that telephone game, right? It's almost passed down generation after generation. And if you're a player, you're gonna tell people this, and your kids one day, and it's this really cool, holistic kind of approach to a sport. Where it's a basketball, it's like, yeah, you just got to shoot that thing and make it. Which I know there's more to it, but golf, I think, it's always like this. We've made it really, really easy and simple in this box of education and learning, and we go, what happens if we open that up? We're a lot smarter. My whole thing is like, let's make it easy for people. Well, I don't think that's always the case. I think if you open that up, then you go, man, there's a lot more to learn. If we're not learning, we're not thinking. So I think overall, I think it's a good thing that we say it doesn't have to be in this small little box that we need to keep our swing thoughts in.
The game of golf. It's both challenging and rewarding, requiring focus, concentration, and the ability to tune out outside distractions. Peak performance is achieved through a synergy of body and mind. Shell Golf Apparel is designed with advanced textile technology that moves with you, with four-way stretch and moisture-wicking properties that keep you cool and dry. Visit shell.shop today and get 40% off the entire golf collection using promo code PlayerPursuits. Now, back to the podcast with your host, Alex Shattuck.
Yeah, so we're talking about all of this. So within the context of your academy, what kind of player does your facility attract, do you think? From an ideology standpoint, from a way that you train?
Right. I think we attract all golfers that are obviously trying to learn. We have specialty within EGA in the Eisman Golf Academy that we are kind of out there and known for some of the technology that we do have. So we do attract golfers that are looking for a little bit more data. They're looking for a little bit more information. They're looking for a different maybe golf swing than they've had, or golf lesson that they've had before. And I think we can really provide that with the technology that we do have. I see primarily a lot of those good ball strikers. We work a lot with high school kids, and then getting them to college. And then I've got many tour players. I've been fortunate enough to work with tour players within our facility here, even as well, to collab with other coaches and share that data. And I think really what's unique and what's different about EGA is the experience that you get in a golf lesson is totally different. I haven't talked about a grip probably in 2 years, which is great, but I might talk about how you pressure a grip, but we just look overall again at the body, the movement. And I think sometimes people think I'm not good enough for that. I just want to hit it on the face. But again, it's important to have that conversation with those students that say that and say, look, this will help you even more put it on the face if we do have some of the movement pieces in place. So, and we do this with short game. We even measure it with putting. It's one of those things that really, in my opinion, fits the mold into creating a better golfer, but just really getting that education to that golfer that maybe has been lacking some of that info.
Yeah, I mean, as instructors, we all love working with nerds and talented juniors and pros,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think having the capacity to take advanced information and simplify it down to help anybody regardless
Sure.
of their goals, right? I mean, there's
Right.
the guys that are trying to beat their buddies. There's the guys
Sure.
that are just trying to get back to somewhere where they were before,
Right.
and being able to
Right.
provide information in a way that meets everyone's needs is very valuable.
Right. And I think, there's nothing that that student's member guest is their major, right? Like
Oh,
that
100%.
that high school kid trying out for their high school team is Augusta at the Masters. So of where they are in life, and I think it's very important that we as instructors always remember that you know, maybe I'm not working with a tour player, but the goals that this golfer is trying to achieve are just as important. And we make sure through, you know, when we sit down, we have a little interview and we say, hey, look, what are we trying to do today? It's never me in here saying, hey, I think you should do this, this, this. The first thing that I ask a student and all my guys here is, what would you like out of today? What are you trying to get? And why? Because I want to make my high school team, because I want to win the ladies 9-hole club champion. All of those things need to be just as important to that instructor as if a tour player comes to you and say, hey, look, I'm trying to qualify for this or make millions of dollars. And I think that's important. And that's something that we can't forget when we're teaching everybody, the general public. Those goals are just as equal for everybody.
I love the way that you said that when, you know, I was with a player at the US Open this year, and I had them later hop on a Zoom call with all my clients. And you know, I kind of took him through, I took him back to the first tee box. I was just like, what, you know, walk through what you were feeling. And he described, you know, it was a little harder to breathe. I started going a little fast, like, you know, all the standard things. And I looked at my players, I said, does that sound familiar? Because it's the same experience.
It is.
And
you're
I mean,
exactly
we're human,
right,
and the way we value it, we're going to respond the same way.
100%. It's a weird game because tomorrow when you wake up and play, you're about to hit 50% of the shots that you've never really hit before in your life, right? Like, how do you really prepare for this game, right? How can you prepare for what the weather's going to be, where your lie's going to be? My jacket I'm playing affects my backswing. The game, you can go out and play the first hole at your local course every day, all day long, and it's never going to be the same. So it's hard in that realm of understanding, like, it is such a hard sport, but let's just create some stuff that maybe there's some predictability. I hate that word consistency. That's something that it's like, consistency in golf. Are you kidding me? That's let's throw that out. Let's make some matchups. Let's do some things within our practice that maybe we're just upping our percentages of some predictability. That, hey, that ball's going to go a little bit straighter. But yeah, the correlation of what all of us feel. I've been so nervous on a tee box I couldn't even spit. Everybody feels it, and which I think is it's a great part of the game. It's something that we feel as a junior golfer, and even if you play the tour, you still have those feelings. Experience in the sport, I don't know, like what does experience mean? Like, you know, a 13-year-old playing AJGA getting really experienced is still feeling the same thing that a brand new golfer is experiencing, right? So it's all relative within all of us of how we're very similar within the game of golf.
Yeah, and I love the way you said that. I love the little thoughts on consistency. I think, you know, I think consistency, that leads straight into one of my questions. I think it's one of the most misunderstood or overused terms in the game of golf. Every player that I give a first lesson to, or even clients a little longer term, the first thing they say is, I just want to be consistent. And I say, I don't really know what that means. This is a game of misses. You're going to miss constantly. What are the best? The PGA Tour average greens in regulation is what, 11 point something. They hit 9 fairways per round. Like these are not eye-popping numbers.
4 to 4.5 birdies. Right. It's really, you're 100% right. I really, I think it's kind of, we all have the greater picture, which is consistency in our mind. But really, it's one of those things as far as, you know, when somebody says that phrase, what I always say is, look, I've measured a tour player that's top 5 in the world in ball striking, and every single swing I got to watch everything. Every single movement piece was different. So, and within those swings, right? And if you use technology and you get somebody on, and you're making these swings and you get to look at data, you see every single swing is a little bit different, right? It depends on how maybe you slept on the wrong side of my neck hurts, right? Every day is something different with what you're going to use out there on the golf course. So consistency, I agree with you that consistency it's a tough phrase. It's a phrase within the golf industry that I think will always be there, but it's very. I think we need to kind of come at that a little different way from an instructor point of view, for sure.
Yeah, I always try to tell players, working through your technique, I want to help continue to raise the ceiling, and we can raise the floor there as well. But I think a lot of getting to play at the highest possible level that you're capable of, we might have to go beyond the swing a little bit. We're gonna have to teach you how to manage some emotions, how to play those different lies and things of that nature. And I think that is what keeps us coming back, because we're still learning more in that regard too, how to better convey that information, get players to shoot lower scores. But it's that inconsistency that makes the game addicting too.
Yeah, absolutely. We use the term here a lot, like intent, right? Like we change these things and we say like, okay, what's my intent? Well, people kind of walk backwards and they go, well, my pre-shot routine, and it's like your brain already knows that. Like it already knows what it's supposed to do. You could see the water to the left. There's out of bounds right. You don't have to self-create this whole painted picture in your head. But it's the intent, right? Like what is the intent in this shot right here? And I'd like to take that and I like to put that within a movement piece that the player can A, feel, B, do, and it's not something that they can't control. So whether that's a little bit more pressure in your trail foot as you're pressing down to get the golf club, maybe it's a little bit of a preset of pressure, getting those intents to change and staying within those intents as you play around at golf, because that's the hardest part, right? You're going to have that intent and you're going to fail with that. And then we go, oh God, the door's open, right? It's you got all these swing thoughts, everything going on. But if you stick with these intents and you say, I'm going to play 18 holes today, and I'm going to make sure every shot I have the intent that I'm going as fast as I can when I need to, whatever that intent is. I think that's where you can start to see some things a little bit different as far as how we manage, how we maintain, how we play around a golf, and even how we practice around a golf.
Yeah, that little spiral that you described when something goes wrong, or we say, oh, it's because I forgot this. Oh, it's because I forgot this. No, it's part of the flow of the game. I right before I got into coaching and teaching myself as a player, I had a former tour player talk to me about exactly what you described with intent, which was he made me the night before I went to the course every day, he made me write down exactly what I was going to do. So that, for this 20-minute segment, I'm working on one thing, and I'm not gonna let my emotions take over and go work on, go run away with this thought that's not gonna work. It's like
I totally agree with that.
When we go to the gym, the people that are always there and the ones getting the best results have their little notebooks, and we laugh at them, but like they're
the ones getting results.
Can work. Yeah, exactly.
Right. No, so, I totally agree. And my old coach used to say, I do want to put this in there. I trained under a guy in our section named Al Jamison, and he's long passed away, but he's a PGA Hall of Famer. He was 93 years old when he started teaching me in my 20s. But he used to always say, your round of golf, the gasoline is already out there on the golf course. It's just a matter of when you want to light the match on top of the gasoline, right? So it's like, we know that we're going to hit some bad ones, and it's up to you whether or not you want to compound that or try to understand that, or just be okay with that. I think if you put the T-peg in the ground and you have this intent of, you know what, I'm going to hit some really bad ones, but I'm also going to hit some really good ones. And that's hard to do within competition and tournament golf. But I think every level, no matter if it's junior golf, college golf, tour golf, development tour, the reason you're playing is to learn. The reason that you keep playing is to learn the game, even at the highest level. Deep down, I think, why do you play? Yeah, I play because I make money, but it's the only way to really learn, is by playing, and by playing in competition. And so from that, first tee to U.S. kids, to AJGA, to college, to mini tours, to the professionals, the only reason we keep on that track is to keep learning. We learn by playing in this sport.
Yeah, and kind of going in with that, I think it's easy to look forward and back and decide what we want to do. I know that that entire little conversation segment on intent and being deliberate in how we spend our time and work on things. Was my biggest regret as a college player or someone who was looking to jump
Sure.
into playing full time.
Yeah.
Is I wish I had learned those lessons, just 4 or
Sure.
5 years earlier. Maybe it would have been different.
If
But
only, right, Alex? If only, if we only knew what would help us. Yeah, I totally agree. I think instruction, and I know in your time in your career and where we are now, it's totally different. And I think, does a player need a coach or does a player need an instructor, right? Like those two things are even in play nowadays. I feel like more where a coach is gonna take you out on that golf course, and a coach is gonna watch you and say after the round, be like, man, you did this great. And for us instructors, I was a coach for a little bit, and it's wonderful that you could go out and play with all your students, and you could really, as business grew, I became more of an instructor. And it's hard. I'm always at night looking at my phone, and my wife's like, "Who are you talking?" And it's a million students sending me all their information, right? Like, "Hey, coach, look at this. Is this better?" So it is like it's this endless journey that you're going on with that student, every time they hit a ball, every time they play.
Yeah, take and just to take that one a little bit, I had the opportunity to coach college golf for a year, and
Sure.
my
Yeah.
director of golf, when I showed up, he said, "You will learn more in the first 3 months of doing this job than you've learned in the last decade." And I was like, "What are you talking
Right.
about?" Sure enough,
Right.
qualifying first event, you learn a lot about golf. You're
Yeah.
standing
Right.
you're
Right.
getting a 10,000-foot view, looking down and going, "What are they doing? Why are you
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
that?" Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you can apply it, to yourself and actually
Uh,
coach and teach it better than ever before.
uh, right. 100%. That's why I think there are some. I always feel like there are wonderful instructors that blossom from that coaching element. And vice versa. There's people that start off as instructors, and then they kind of grow into the game, and they become more of a coach. And I think, and I always tell parents that are kind of looking for that right fit, even for their junior golfers, like, what do you need? Do you need that coaching kind of view of the game, or do you need that more instruction based? And I think, yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I know you coaching, I'm sure you could go, wow, like, I just noted the whole team hit in that hazard. Why? Like, it's just
Yeah.
interesting. It's a way different look at. It's kind of what parents see a lot, right? Like,
Mhm.
why'd you hit in the water? Um,
That's exactly what it is.
so, so, so I'm a big believer that parents are coaches to a certain extent.
Mhm.
Because they're the ones that are out there watching, and it's important. I even think at times for them to give that input, give that feedback back to an instructor, and say, "Hey, look, I've watched Pierce here, and like, this is what I've noticed." Because maybe that son or daughter isn't seeing those things out there as they're playing.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times a parent has actually been like, it's completely changed the way that I work with a player, knowing maybe the background or what the junior or the student is omitting from what they're telling me,
Right,
for whatever
right,
reason. And sometimes you just have to get it from another source to
right.
actually have the whole picture and know where to take it from
Sure,
there.
sure, absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
I think we kind of brushed on it, and I'd like to power it home.
Yeah,
Regardless of where you're looking for instruction, I think I'm sure you agree, and I'd love to even have you keep talking about it. Sit down with the pro instructor, coach, whatever they're going to be, and talk about what you're looking to get out of it. Because I can't tell you
right.
how many times the approach would have changed or is changed from just a simple conversation like that. And it's also going to let you know if you click with that person, if you believe what they believe, and if you're going to dive all the way in or not.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that interview is with your student, with your client, that interview where you sit down and you say, hey, okay, what are we after today? You could say, what are we after short term and long term? I'm not a big believer of that, to be honest, because I feel like if you set your goals kind of that way, it's like, I've got this tournament that's 6 weeks out. This is the most important tournament that I'm going to play, and I need to do all this stuff to prepare for that. I think that's a harder way to kind of manage golf and all that strain that you're putting on yourself for that one tournament.
Well, you're turning that one tournament into your US Open.
Exactly. And I always tell people, no matter what you're playing in, your next tournament is not the most important. And they go, what? And I go, the most important thing is what you did over the past 20 tournaments. So, and what you're about to do, right? I think overall, it's important that you keep having that conversation with that student. You keep the dialogue open. You allow them, because I think this is the key too. You allow them to give you the feedback after they play, and you say, okay, great. How was the intent that we talked about? How many straight shots did we hit? We don't need to work balls all over the place. We're not Tiger. We don't need to hit cuts in the back right pins. Like, how many straight balls did you have? I think really you could put a blueprint together for every single one of your players based off of what they want. And that's a game changer, I feel like, in the world of golf instruction, because it's usually what the golf instructor wants you to do. And again, we're all trying to help, but if it comes from the student side, if they're the one that's feeding that, like, yeah, I need to get faster, Alex, can we spend the next 3 lessons getting faster? Sure, let's get faster, but we can't focus on where the golf ball goes yet, but we're going to get you faster, and then maybe we can put it together. I think it's okay to really give them what it is that they want. We're not this Exxon station where you pull in and the guy says, look, you need new ruts and these brake pads need to go, and we should be a little bit more open to what that golfer is after, because if there's a missing link there, I feel like that's when that instructor may not be giving the best information to that student. They can be broad with how they communicate and what they're after, but it all should maintain and merge back to exactly what that student has come in for.
Well, yeah, otherwise it's just like running in a hamster wheel. We got to keep them moving forward in order to actually enjoy and see the value in what they are doing and what they're spending all this time and quite frankly, money to do.
Exactly.
So we have to, you have to have the player work on what they want to be developing. Otherwise, they're going to get sick of it, and it's not exactly what we're trying to do here.
Right. Exactly. And maybe you need a coach to go out there and see what that actually is if the player can't come up with, because a player might say, hey, look, I need everything. And right. And you go, okay, well, we could give you everything, but I think that's where a coach and going out and watching what happens, you go, oh yeah, like let's focus on this area, because this is what we've been seeing over the past couple of rounds is we're missing a lot of greens, so let's focus on some of these areas. But I think that golf can be, I have a lot of times where guys come in, they go, I'm hitting my driver great, my irons stink, and then the next day or the following week, it's like my driver is awful, and so it's like we've got to balance this out the right way with staying with some of these intents and staying with the goals that we're really trying to achieve. If you are bouncing all over the place with everything, I do think it's much harder to do. We're all good at something in golf. We all are. I guarantee you, even beginners, we're all really good at certain things within our games. We might not believe it. We might not see the proof of it all the time. But there are skill sets that we have that are better than others. You keep sharpening those, but sometimes there's other areas of the game that need to be focused on.
Well, and I think the easiest way to see that is in numbers. like
Sure.
assigning value to things. So even if you don't want to go crazy with some stat software, if you just keep track of, your fairways, your greens, that way it's not
Right.
driven purely by emotion. If you do a drill,
Right.
keep track so you know what maybe your baseline is, and you know that
Sure.
next time you go do it, just because it felt worse doesn't always mean it's worse. I've had
Right. Yeah.
players be elite ball strikers and tear and have short games that need a lot of work, and they tell me they need to keep hitting balls. I mean, that's your
Right.
superpower.
Right. Yeah.
And at least then,
Yeah, for sure.
they still want to work on their swing, their speed, whatever. We can absolutely do that, but let's at least have
Right.
the valid information to make that determination.
100%. And I think there's this big thing going around now, Alex, that says, don't believe the data, or, the data doesn't always make the player better. And I say no.
I agree.
I say there's no way. There's no way that if the data is improving on what it is that you and that client, that golfer wants to work on, if that is improving, they are improving. And I think, I was in a seminar a couple of days ago, and we had 50 coaches all over the world here, and there was this big discussion about the same thing, kind of like, well, just because the data got better doesn't mean he's going to go out there and play. And I would totally disagree. That we are seeing the good that is coming out of that topic. Maybe we need to keep doing it. Maybe there's some little work and some intents that we have to keep in order to maintain that. But if the data is changing and is trending in the direction that we want it to go in, that player will get better. And I think that's something that I really like with having all the technology, is we're able to see that. And we're like, man, that actually was a lot better than what you did. Is feel real? You can talk about that all day long, but overall, I want the player to see the proof. And the only way we could show that is with the data.
Mhm.
So there's a big correlation in my mind to when that data is changing, whether it's something on TrackMan that you're doing, whether it's something on speed or on torque and toe heel force, or jumping out of the ground and getting linear force to hit it faster. Whatever that is, yes, collect that data, see that data change. That player is getting better with their overall game.
Yeah, it amazes me, because to me it's so simple. Exactly what you said. It does amaze me when people put on, the blindfold. I still see arguments, whether it be on social media or at the club, whatever,
Sure.
about
Sure.
how distance is not as big of a deal as it is. It's
Yeah.
all the numbers are there. If you're not
Yeah.
accepting the value of speed and distance at this point, you're choosing to not look at things.
You're right. I think the people that sometimes might be saying that are the people that haven't done those things themselves, right?
Right.
And you can always say like, well, yeah, I've never really had a player that goes, man, I'm hitting it longer and I'm getting really bad at golf. I don't ever hear that. I go, man, I've hit all of these over the green today, but I had a blast because I hit it really good, right?
I love hearing that one. I say I'll never apologize for having that happen.
Right. And I mean, the hardest thing for us to do is just hit a solid strike ball that goes kind of far and straight. And you go, right, like, I'm sure even you have students that sometimes go, oh, that wasn't good. And you look at it and you go, what? Like, you just did the hardest thing, in my opinion, in sports, besides hitting a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, is to hit a golf ball pretty solid and pretty straight. You better like that, because that's what it is that you almost get addicted to.
Well, I always like to say, like, if we had that one on the course, could you play it? Like, oh, I guess. Well, it's pretty good then. Can you make par with that shot? Cool.
That's a great thing. You see people out there practicing, they go, oh, I'm cutting it, and slicing it all over the place, and how is that relative to what it is you're going to do tomorrow when you play? Are you still going to continue to do that? We don't even know. Maybe tomorrow you draw it. So yeah, it's again, I like to go back to keeping the intents, and I like to go back to do those match up to some predictables. Okay, that's just upping our percentages of some good stuff that might snowball on top of each other, and for us to play pretty good. And I think if we keep it in that thought process for the most part, then people enjoy it. People get better.
Yeah. No, I think John, this has been just a fantastic conversation.
Yeah,
I hope
I
that the
appreciate it.
listeners, coaches, players, I think we kind of threw something for everybody to hopefully get something quality out of it. It's been
Yeah.
absolutely great to have you on. I'm sure we'll ask you to come on again.
I appreciate that, Alex.
Do you
I
have
enjoyed the time.
anything you're trying to plug? Any last words before we
No,
log
just
off?
keep your intent. Keep
Yeah.
your intent. Get an intent out there when you play, and you'll be much better. It's not a swing thought. It's just an intent. Find that intent. Stick with it. Golf is this big risk reward, and it's okay to throw that. It's okay to throw that scale into risk and get the reward. That's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.